I am the only thing left that stands between the $1 billion I've inherited from my parents and my two evil aunts who are trying to take it away from me. If they find a way to murder me without getting caught by the police, then they will be next in line to receive the $1 billion inheritance. However, this story starts with my biological parents, who met each other at university. They were both brilliant academics and deeply in love. After they graduated college, they founded a biotechnology company together, which focused on developing drugs for rare diseases like toxoplasmosis. They only managed to create 2 successful drugs in 15 years, but that was enough to sell their company for more than $1 billion. And this is where the horror story begins. Right after my parents became billionaires, they were invited by my 2 aunts, Becky and Elizabeth, for Sunday brunch in a cafe up in the mountains. This was the first time I'd ever met these aunts. They had never cared about meeting my parents before, so I was suspicious about their motives, especially because my parents had just gotten rich. Well, during the brunch, my aunts only talked about money and what they would do if they were billionaires. I couldn't stand either of them, and I was glad when our family reunion was over. But on our way back home, we had to drive back down the mountain, and that's when we got hit by another car. We were pushed over the edge of the road, and I can't remember anything afterward. All you gotta know is that I was the only survivor. A 12-year-old orphan all on my own. Well, not quite. My aunts Becky and Elizabeth were my closest relatives, so they automatically became my guardians. I remember them rushing into my hospital room where I was lying with broken bones and internal injuries. They said, "Oh, so you survived the car crash. Well, that's great news. You're such a lucky girl." Those 2 witches didn't look happy at all to see me alive. I thought maybe they just hated the idea of becoming my guardians and having to take care of me now, but I didn't yet suspect them to be behind the car accident. The police who investigated the crash came to the conclusion that someone had accidentally pushed us over the cliff, and out of fear of going to jail, did a hit and run. It didn't matter though. I wasn't allowed to touch my parents' $1 billion inheritance until I turned 18, so I had to move in with my aunts. And while they didn't like me, they mostly left me alone. But after a year, I started to get sick all the time. Every week, I had some new kind of infection. My aunts decided to bring me to a specialist doctor they had found, Dr. Malds. He did all kinds of tests on me, and when the results came in, he told me, "I'm sorry to inform you that we found metastases in your brain. You have cancer." He showed me the MRI scans, and I started to cry. I was young, but not stupid. I could tell that the cancer had spread everywhere. Will I survive? Unfortunately, the cancer is too advanced to be cured. With maximum treatment and lots of chemotherapy, you might get another 6 to 12 months to live. But on a personal level, I'd advise against it. Spending your last few months in a hospital bed is not a great way to die. Instead, I recommend you to hang out with friends and to enjoy your life. So just like my parents, I was going to die young. I went back home and my Aunt Becky asked, "So what did the doctor say?" "He told me I got cancer."
"What? No, those are horrible news."
Becky tried to act sad, but I could tell she felt happy about it. And no wonder. She was my closest blood relative, and she knew that if I died, she'd get my parents' $1 billion inheritance. But none of that mattered now. I went to my room and wondered how I would spend the last few months of my life. Becky brought some food to my bed, but I wasn't hungry and I just stared at it. That's when I noticed something. In the spaghetti my aunt had brought me, I could see something white, some kind of powder in the bolognese sauce. And it wasn't Parmesan cheese, because it was perfectly white and way too refined. Somehow my intuition told me to investigate this. So when my aunts left the apartment, I searched everywhere for clues. And indeed, I found a small plastic bag at the back of a drawer in the kitchen. It was filled with a white substance that looked just like the one in my bolognese. I didn't know what it was, but I took a look at our medicine cabinet. Maybe they had crushed the powder from some tablets. Most of the tablets were drugs like aspirin, but I also found a bottle of immunosuppressants. A quick Google search told me that they are used to suppress the immune system during organ transfers. Suddenly, it all clicked. The reason why I had constantly been sick over the last few months was because my aunts had mixed these tablets into my meals and thereby turned off my immune system. But what about the cancer? Was Dr. Maltz in on my aunt's plan? Did they pretend that I had cancer so they could murder me and make it look like I had died of natural causes? So that there would be no police investigation about my death? It all seemed very unlikely. I didn't think anyone could come up with such a complex plan and execute it. But just to be sure, I did an experiment and stopped eating my aunt's meals for the next few days. To my surprise, I immediately started to feel better. And that's why I decided to go to another hospital with a different doctor. I wanted to get a second MRI scan. And guess what? This scan showed no cancer inside my brain whatsoever. So it had all been a lie and my aunts really wanted me dead. I was scared, but I also wanted to expose them. So I sat them down at the kitchen table and told them, over the last few days, I've been in contact with a lawyer. As you might know, my parents were wealthy and left me a large fortune. I don't have much time left to live, so I decided to create a will and donate my parents' fortune to a charity for children with cancer. My aunts' faces went pale. Then Becky started yelling at me, calling me a horrible person for not leaving any money to my family. I responded, "It's my decision, and I believe it's best if I give away everything to charity. Tomorrow morning, I will go to my lawyer, sign the papers, and finish my will."
But we've spent thousands of dollars on you. We've provided you with food, shelter, and clothes. And now you won't give us anything in return? You ungrateful bitch!
I'm not surprised that you two are more sad about losing some money than you were when I told you I had terminal cancer. Then I went to my room and I locked the door. I knew they wouldn't let me off like that. They had planned on murdering me for years. And now they only had one day left to get rid of me. I knew they were freaking out, but I was prepared. I had put my phone on record and fastened it to the bottom of the kitchen table out of sight. I hoped it would record a conversation of my aunts talking about wanting to murder me, so I had some hard evidence against them. But I hadn't planned things through enough. When it got dark, Becky knocked on my door, asking me to come out of my room and talk. I responded, "I can't come out because I'm about to go to sleep." But she just kept knocking, and after a while threatened to smash in the door if I didn't come out. I could tell they were desperate and saw this as their last chance to murder me. Then I heard hammer blows on the door. They were trying to get the door hinges out. My original plan was to call the police if things got dangerous, but my phone was still under the table in the kitchen. Well, that's when the door fell down. Both my aunts stared at me, and all I could do was put on my poker face and pretend I was in full control. I said, "Oh, hello. I've been waiting for you two." They paused and looked at me confused and irritated. "I just called the police. They're coming. I'll tell them everything. Because I know what you two did to me. You put these tablets into my food to shut off my immune system and also made up my cancer diagnosis." Becky went pale again and screamed at Elizabeth, telling her to get the tablets and flush them down the toilet.
"No one will believe you," she said. "You are already dead."
And maybe she was right. Unless my phone under the kitchen table had recorded hard evidence of them talking about their plan to murder me, I would have no evidence that any of this had happened. I mean, if I went to court, no one would believe me, a 13-year-old girl, claiming there was a big conspiracy going on against her with her aunts trying to murder her. I wasn't sure what to do, but my Aunt Becky looked distracted, so I made a dash for the door to escape. She tried to grab me, but I slipped from her grasp and ran into the kitchen to grab my phone and then escaped from the apartment. As I fled, I accidentally tripped down the stairs and fell badly, hurting my ribs and wrenching my ankle, but I made it out. Once I was on the street and safe, I played the recording on my phone, but quickly figured that the audio quality was very poor and one couldn't understand anything my aunts had said. However, I still went to the police though. I claimed that the injuries I had suffered were caused by my aunts. I said that they had hit me and pushed me down the stairs. In the end, it was my aunt's word against mine, but the authorities still allowed me to move into a safe home for children under the age of 18. It's okay here, but I'm still afraid of my aunts. I wonder what new plans they are hatching to murder me and steal my inheritance.